I have to go to the bathroom.
So bad.
So bad. I'm doing Lamaze exercises right now to keep.
Okay, go do what you need.
Well,
to
no,
do.
like, what do you just finish it up?
Go.
I'm not. I don't want to come back.
I
don't
can
want to come
talk
back.
to you while you're shitting. So
Oh my
I'll
God.
be here on the mic. You go into the bathroom.
If you just give me a minute, I might be able to breathe through.
You are listening to the new man beyond the Macho Jerk and the New Age Wimp. Your host is men's coach Tripp Lanier.
Do you wish that you could change something about your partner? Is there something about them that keeps you from committing? And how is staying in the shallow end of the pool drowning your relationship? Today, my wife Alyson and I share a cup of coffee and flounder through a conversation about changing your partner, refusing to be the bad guy, and why it's so important to keep your side of the street clean.
Oh, I want to just ask how you're doing with your dog, your lovely
My dog.
Your lovely
How about
dog.
our dog?
How's your
Tasmanian
lovely,
devil.
your lovely dog? I mean, how do you deal with that mistake? How are you? The regret. What's it like living with that regret?
Yeah, it is. There's a regret that I listened to you.
Oh,
To your everyday desire, talking about wanting a dog and your challenges of like, oh, you're not going to call him. Have you called him yet? I am. There's this deep regret of actually yielding.
I feel like we're competing. Who's the victim here? We're racing to the bottom.
Racing to the bottom. Yeah.
All right.
We all do better in this family when everybody takes responsibility.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's when you're not. That's how
Well,
you don't.
I appreciate you taking responsibility for your dog. So,
You know, when she's going to be an awesome dog, I do trust that that's true. And when she is, she will be my dog.
she will be.
Because I'm fully sure that when she becomes a great dog, you're going to say that she's your dog.
We'll see. I don't know. I don't know if it's hard to imagine at this point.
Yeah. You marked your words in November that you would never, ever love the dog, right?
Never. Mark my words. What do you want to talk about? I saw you writing something.
Yeah. So essentially, I was working with somebody who came to me from listening to one of our podcasts that I think you dubbed it like sort of should I stay or should I go kind of a.
That one's been a big one.
That one's been a big one. Yeah. So, and I do get people to reach out to me because of that particular podcast. So this person was somebody that did that, and we had worked together for some time, and I helped them get through the shit or get off the pot kind of situation that they were in. Just as a rough summary, they were like, I don't know if I want to be in this relationship. I don't know if I'm ready, if I can commit to this. I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I want this. We did all the things. I worked with him in order to help him decide. He ultimately did decide that he was all in, and it changed everything.
All right.
He was all in, like went and lived life, and life has been grand, and it was a total game changer for his own life, his own sort of leveling up for himself, as well as this relationship. And when we checked in, we had a check-in call several months after all that happened, and recently, and he said, "Well, I'm bumping up against this thing." It was an aspect of her personality that before he was like, I don't know if I can be with this person because of this.
Right.
Like he was
So
using
something
it.
about her bothers
Something
him.
about her way of being that really bothered him. That before he was using it as a thing of like, I can't see. This is like
Right.
I don't want to be with somebody that's like this.
Yeah. The murdering.
Yeah,
Has to stop.
The murdering has to stop. Yeah, the farting, the incessant farting. So he comes back to me and he says, well, so there's this thing, this is still, this is showing up again.
She's still doing the
She's still doing it, the thing. But essentially he was like checking something out that I had coached him. The way that I'd coached him in the past with her was essentially, can you be with things as they are? So if she's going to be this way for the rest of your relationship, what's that like? Can you be with that? Mm-hmm. The idea was like, she's not going to change. So you don't get to hold her changing her way of being over her head in order for you to be a yes to the relationship. So you be with her as she is or leave.
Right.
Like figure it out. You don't get to control how this relationship, how she shows up in relationship. You need to decide if you want to be in the relationship as it is.
Yeah, we need to tease that apart, but go ahead.
Yes. But the point was, it was strategic on my part on purpose because he was so kind of judgy and wavery and all of that. It was really about, can you be with things as they are? And it really ended up helping him so much that so much so that he got through all the things that was going on for him around the things that he couldn't be with and then ended up really embracing her and the relationship. And so much of that is like, great now. He brought that up, that I had said to him, that I taught him about like, yeah, basically she's not going to change. Mm-hmm. And he was like, well, I just want to check on that because I can't remember how he asked, but basically he was kind of asking like, do you really think that she can't ever change? Or is this an issue that I can talk to her about? Because it's not working for me.
Right.
What I said to him was, I was like, oh, that was just a strategic approach on my part to help him where he was at the time. Like I totally believe that you can work shit out and change and people can not stay in their sort of rutted patterns if they want to change.
Yeah.
But I had to tell him that. I had to say, oh, no. Like that. I mean, yes, it's really important to be able to be with things as they are. Mm-hmm. But to be clear, that was specifically to help you figure out whether or not you were going to stay or go.
Right.
That didn't actually have anything to do with, can this relationship be what you want it to be? Mm-hmm. And so he was really like, oh, wait, really? Like, so now what?
How do I get her to change?
Yeah, so that's right. And so we have
things are great now. Let's fuck it up.
I love you. You're perfect. Now change.
Well, what if we just stuck with the can you change, or can my partner change, and that whole thing? And I use that often with people that I work with. Is like, if this person never changed, would you stay in the relationship?
Yeah,
because a lot of times
valuable.
we're more attached to who we think they could be, and should be,
fully their potential.
Yeah, and it's just like, oh my gosh, if they would just be like this more often, they're 20% of the time or 60% of the time they're this person.
When we have dinner guests over,
and it's great, but then the rest of the time I have it sucks or it's hard, and so it's like, yeah. So if things never changed,
it's really important.
Do you see yourself still in this 5, 10 months or years from now?
Yes.
And it helps to relax that.
Yes.
And just come back to, okay, this is who this person is. Is this a deal breaker? Does this work? And I also think that, there's an aspect of this about getting granular about what they're doing that's not okay. So if they're aggressive,
right.
It's one thing if they just have mannerisms, right. And, I think there's roommate challenges. Like we just have roommate problems. I'd have this problem with anybody if they were a roommate and they're living together and just managing life together. And then there are things that are life, philosophical values level, worldview level. It's not like we've got to have the same exact thing, but we're on the same plane. And
or like parenting, how we might parent a child.
Yeah, there's just
dogs.
things that we're on the same page about the big stuff.
Yeah.
And we have a shared vision for what we want. And we're both moving towards that, and it's not an adversarial thing. I think that's really important to get. But a lot of folks aren't on the same page. They've never even talked about it.
Yeah, and some people can do that and make it work. Also, which is amazing.
But I would say that if the thing that they can't be with, you were framing it through that lens, like the thing you can't be with is them being aggressive or them being, there's something that's really toxic in the environment. Like, yeah, you got to name that and obviously set boundaries. Like, no, it's not okay to treat me this way or whatever. I think it's really important to knock that out. Another thing that happens that I want to speak to is that when we clean up our side of the street in a relationship, like there's a dynamic that exists between two people and it requires both people to maintain that dynamic. So if I clean up my side of the street, meaning that dynamic changes because I change, then who knows who the other person will be now. And it's not that you got to watch out for this because it can be, I do a thing so that the other person, like I'm trying to manipulate or leverage the other person. Right. But it's more of when I coach somebody, it's like, let's get you aligned with the relationship you would love to be in no matter what and have you live that way now and not wait for permission to clean, be present or to do the things that make you happy or do the things that have you feel more free, alive, etc. Just to honor yourself in relationship and not blame the other person or be waiting for the other person to do those things. And a lot of times that disrupts the dynamic and it can inflame things and have the other person be like, I'm not okay with this. Or it can be like, oh my gosh, we're out of this rut that we were in and there's another possibility there.
Well, and I think I would like for you to be specific, use a specific on the ground example, because you're speaking about concepts that a lot of people, it'll be over their heads. If you don't
so which part? The dynamic
everything
thing?
You just said. Yeah. Like when you work on yourself, when you address what's going on for you.
So let's say like, I remember I was in a relationship and
not this one,
not with you, but I could see looking back where I had one foot out the door the whole time. And also I had other things in my life that were way more important to me than being in that relationship. The woman I was with at that time was highly anxious and playing games with me to try to get me hooked and get attention and that kind of stuff.
Feel that you were not.
And I just remember at the time being like, she's a gigantic pain in the ass. And it was just a lot of conflict and a lot of tension and a lot of whatever. And I could, with compassion, I could see like, wow, how would I act if I was in love with somebody who had a foot out the door and with priorities in another place? Like I would have a really hard time being in that relationship. I'd feel very insecure and anxious too. So even if nobody's at fault, there's not like somebody's the bad guy
it's
in
palpable.
that scenario.
It's in the room.
It's like
a felt experience.
This would be a tough place to be in. This would be a tough relationship to be with, and I could understand why somebody would feel anxious, and then maybe start to, if they're hooked or activated, start to act out and do things that were damaging to the relationship.
And so that was part of you working on yourself, like really kind of turning the mirror to yourself. You found compassion for her.
I found compassion for her.
You found awareness in what you're patterning, what you were doing.
Well, I mean, in that specific situation, I think there was a part of me that was like, I need her to be different. I needed her to be on the same page with me about these things because I'm held back or whatever. And I can't do them, which was boohoo, poor me.
But it's common, super common. That's a super common setup for
So
couples.
I just stopped waiting. It was like, I'm going to go do these things. And I'd love to have you be a part of them. And the door is always open if you want to be a part of them. You're not excluded. But I'm going to start to do these things.
So what I hear you say is, in some ways, there is a willingness to be with things as they are and still take care of yourself through it.
Yeah, and I think to me it was, I was tired of blaming her. And I think that was where I think where a lot of us could get stuck is, it's my partner's fault why I'm not happy and I'm not doing a thing. When in actuality, there's nothing holding you back.
Right.
You could be doing the thing and you're using the other person as an excuse. And that one can sting. But in reality, it's usually why we're with another person is we get to stay safe and we get to stay in our little comfort zone and we have somebody to blame for why we aren't doing things that are more risky in our lives or more challenging.
Well, I think this is great. And I think I want to bring it a little bit more home for like a more personal, just you and me. And because one of the things that I see, we've talked in other podcasts, we've talked about quote, inviting somebody into a thing, right? Invite them to invite them to come along.
I use that tone of voice too when I say
yeah. You're like in your manly coaching voice, and then suddenly you tell them to invite them in.
Join me. Won't you?
Invite them into what you want more of, right? The invitation for what you want more of.
It's not a demand. It's not a demand. Ultimatum.
But, it can be a request too. But I want to talk about how I'm going to give you credit. I'm going to make you look better than some of the conversations have been over the last 20 years. But but I say that in all sincerity, like mostly you have been really strategic with me. So the context that I want to bring in is I was sort of in a habitual familial nervous system pattern, cultural, whatever you want to call the pattern, wherever it came from, but of basically like, I have to bust my ass. I have to be constantly working, overworking, overfull.
That was your pattern.
That was my pattern. Mm-hmm. So when we met, I think I was seeing like 25 or 27 clients a week or something ridiculous, which, by the way, anybody that's not a psychotherapist, that's a ridiculous amount of hours for that level of one-on-one intensity and holding and, presence and all of that. So, and pretty much every Friday at the end of the week, or sometimes even just at the end of the day, but usually I found it was like towards the end of the week, I was just toast. Like
I remember taking you to dinner. I was so excited, like, hey, let's go. It's Friday. Yeah. Come on, let's do a thing. And then you broke down crying at the restaurant.
I cannot. I don't want to be around any single human and ever like anymore. I can't give me miles of space. So you being with me as I was you being willing to be with like, okay, I'm with a woman who does this. Like, this is what she does. Mm-hmm. It's my conscious or unconscious choice to do this to myself. But now what I'm doing is having an impact on us, on the we space. Mm-hmm. Certainly it has impact on you, but it has impact on our relationship.
Sure.
Okay. But because you are who you are, someone who has, whether you didn't actually write about it until 20 years later, you have always carried the flag for freedom, aliveness, love, peace, spaciousness, like a certain type of life and lifestyle. Sort of, what are we doing? We better, kind of get busy living. Otherwise you're wasting a life here. So that was very different. That's a very different mindset from where I was coming from, which was just like head down, nose to the grindstone kind of mindset. And instead of you need to change, I can't do this, or I hate this about you, or it's your fault or whatever, you would essentially start to point out in various conversations, you like if I would break down at dinner on a Friday, you would be like, seems like you've had a really full week. Seems like you do this when you have this many clients, or it seems like you haven't had any space for yourself. Like you offered some reflections, but you also would sometimes invite me. Through your curiosity, you would be able to invite me to have my own aha moments and awareness. And over time, that had a huge impact on me at recognizing that I had certain patterns that I was living into that really weren't mine. Like, I didn't necessarily want them. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of personal work I ended up having to do to challenge that pattern, that programming. But my point is that you're not saying change. And you also weren't saying, I'd like to invite you into not working as much. Because I was in a place where I was like, I gotta do this. You can't tell me not to work. That's going to rub my daughter of the feminist movement, kind of, granddaughter of the feminist movement thing the wrong way. I can't do that. I'm not allowed to be dependent. Like there was just a lot that showed up. There was just a lot of junk for me on that.
Yeah.
I felt, looking back, I think, I don't know if this was conscious on your part, but it seemed, if it was incredibly tactical on your part, that over time you were able to, through your own curiosity, willingness to be with me as I was, but also literally be with me, like be in conversation, be in curiosity, be willing to talk to me and let me talk about how I was in my life, that led me to aha moments just as much as you pointing things out. 80% of the time, you would just very neutrally be able to point things out like, I notice when you don't work as much, you're a lot more fun. You have a lot more bandwidth or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's like you were dripping these seeds of awareness and seeds of change, really, for me. I didn't feel manipulated. I didn't feel like you were trying. You were like, no, now that we're married, you're not working, and you're, just because I like you better when you're not working. There wasn't any of that. There were plenty of times where you would say, I'm totally okay with you not working. You're way more fun when you're not working, like that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But you never said, don't work. You always said, I get that you want to. I get that this is important to you. I get that it's fulfilling for you. And I think that without saying so much, you essentially were like, there's also a balance of how do you do what you believe that you love to do, and also have relationship or have your own relationship with yourself or life or whatever, and tend to that in a way where you're not crying on Friday night dinner, date night or whatever. So I think that for me, that is really potent, because we've talked about in other podcasts, invite them into what you want more of or whatever. Mm-hmm. And if somebody's really in their shit, like if they're just in it, then it can easily kind of show up as like, I tried to talk to them, but they just don't want to, or they just, whatever. They're just going to do their thing anyway. So it felt really strategic on my end from you.
I would say strategic. It was conscious. I was very conscious of the position I was taking, and it wasn't passive. It wasn't capitulating.
Right.
But it was also recognizing that if I got into this dynamic with you, if I became a part of you working too much, it would be about us. And if I stayed out of it, you were going to strangle yourself.
Yeah. And so say more about if you got into it, it would be about us. Because I think people do that a lot. So
if I occupied the position of the one flying the flag for you to take more space, or to be healthier for yourself or whatever. If I personified that for you, given who you are and who you were in that time, I now gave you an adversary.
Right.
And so I recognize that without an adversary, I
could just hang myself on the...
Yeah, you would realize it was you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you actually taught me this. Mm-hmm. You taught me this on our honeymoon. Mm-hmm. When I freaked out, which we both gave ourselves permission.
Which freak out was this?
We had a lot of freak outs, but we gave ourselves permission to freak out on our honeymoon. We were at the beach, and we were at some private beach in Maui, and there was some beautiful girls, and they were taking their tops off and rubbing oil on each other and stuff.
Their thong butts.
And we weren't very far away, and I was watching it. I was like, oh my God, I just got married, and I just closed the door on this in my life, and I just screwed up my life and whatever. And I named it with you. Mm-hmm. I just said, hey, I want to name that this is what's going on, that I ruined my life by marrying you.
I invited you into that conversation. I was really palpably obvious that you were like hung up on a thing in that moment.
I just closed the door on all the freedom and aliveness that, it was just, that's it. I just, now it's just domestic death. And you said something to the effect of, I'm not stopping you. If you want that, go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go do it. And not like, go and find out, motherfucker. Like, I'll be waiting for you with a knife. but you didn't take the bait, because if you did, now that's set up within the whole, like, which is, it's really hard for me to hear guys say things like, my wife won't let me.
Right. Yeah. No, essentially what I said was, it's your choice.
It's your choice. Exactly. And that was really liberating for me. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like, it's your choice and it's okay. It was more like, if you make this choice, there's consequences to that choice, but it's totally your choice.
Fully.
And I got to take ownership of it, because I felt it in that moment. I wanted to make you the bad guy.
I could feel you wanting to make me the bad guy.
Which you've done nothing wrong.
Right.
But that was where I realized, like, oh, if I have an adversary, I can focus on you. And now I'm not focusing on how to solve my problem or how to take responsibility for it. I can just scapegoat you.
Right.
And that's what I had done in other relationships. And it's so painful. It kept me from taking responsibility for myself. Mm-hmm. And so I think I was really clear. And I probably had stepped on the mine a few times where you're like, you probably barked at me for wanting to speak up for your mental health and your emotional health and your energetic health. Mm-hmm. And I learned, okay, being the adversary here robs her of the opportunity for her to take responsibility for herself.
And it's that piece around it. And I just want to tie in when we came back to what I was taught is called the fruitional approach. Which is can you be with things as they are? What if they're an asshole off and on for the rest of your life? Like that kind of thing. I want to just tie that back to this moment, because it's you by inherently putting yourself in a position where you were an adversary, that also gave me the experience that you weren't able to be with me as I was.
Right.
And then that immediately put me in a defensive place. Whether it was valid was kind of irrelevant. It was just that dynamic was.
But there's something really nuanced here, which is you get to be who you are, but it does have an impact on me.
Yes.
And not brushing that aside.
Yes, exactly. So, that's what I want to talk about, the impact of the we.
So it's not like, hey, you get to be whoever you are and I'm totally fine with it. It's you get to be whoever you are and it has an impact.
Right.
It's going to impact our dynamic, and that's part of your choice too.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
That when you choose this, it has a ripple effect. So if I choose to try and have sex with two girls on the beach, which I'm sure would have gone wonderfully.
Swimmingly for you. Yeah, they were really into you. They could not stop looking at you, in fact.
I don't even think they knew I was there. So, but it's that there are consequences to there's an impact from what we do. And it's not consequences like, great, now I get to retaliate. It's consequences of like, this breaks connection, or this breaks trust, or this has us move further apart. So please understand, you're free to do what you want, but it will have this impact on us. And I want to name that, not make you the bad guy, not make you wrong, not make you the villain, but I want to name that so that you understand above and beyond whatever funk you're in or whatever thing you're in, that this is not just having an impact on your own mental well-being and your emotional well-being, but it has an impact on our relationship. And you get to continue to do it. And I imagine if I saw it continuing to go forward, there were other things that happened in our relationship at that time that were wake-up calls. And it was like, wake up. Mm-hmm. This isn't okay. Mm-hmm. We're drifting apart here.
Yeah.
And but I think it was, I don't know what had you turn the corner and realize that you wanted to change, though. But that's where it had to become an intrinsic thing, where it was something you wanted for yourself, and not, I have to do this or else my partner's a pain in the ass. Like that's where the resentment comes from, and it's the my wife won't let me, or my husband won't let me kind of thing.
Yeah, it almost seems like it's just looking through two completely different lenses, really. Like what you just said around, like, I have to, otherwise here's a consequence. Like the consequence of my husband's or wife's is a pain in the ass, or won't let me, or whatever. That's a completely different lens, rather than notice what you feel like when you make these choices, and how is it impacting just your own life, like the quality of your own life. I mean, we were lucky enough to where my shit had a direct impact on my own quality of life. So we were able to, kind of lovingly bring awareness and plant seeds around, when I do things this way, I'm pretty freaking full and overwhelmed and miserable. But when there's a choice here. And I wasn't, they were pointing out that just simply there was a choice, just like I did with you on the beach and the honeymoon. It's like just pointing out that there is a choice is sometimes enough to be like, yeah, what do I want? And that's choosing the different lens. It's not because of you that it's putting on a different lens entirely where there's like, oh yeah, I actually do want relationship. I really want to be in this relationship. And the kind of relationship that I want is one that is, I like intimacy. I like closeness. I like belonging. I like that bond that you can really sometimes only get in an adulthood. You can only get with a deeply intimate partner. So that choice.
And if that wasn't there, so we're back to what are the things that would bring a couple together and have them choose one another. That would be one of those things like, you don't value those things. Okay, I do. So we should not have this relationship.
Right.
Those are big indicators. It's not who's right, who's wrong, who's bad, who's good. Yeah. But if you were to place like, look, I just don't really want it that much. I really want to do my work. I have a calling to do this. I could have been like, okay, great. Let's not do this then. Because this is really painful. That's an example of a deep philosophical split. Like where we wouldn't have been on the same page.
Well, hang on. Because actually that was why I wanted to, potentially it is. But potentially, it's someone giving the assessment that that's what's going on. This is so nuanced. It's hard to just speak about it in a generalized way. But the first thing I thought of when you said that was like so many people I have worked with and known that really do want that, but are so wounded that they need to work on their shit in order to be willing to know how even to cultivate that secure bond. But it's like people could want to be there and just need help getting there.
That's different though. But I think what matters is, do we want the same things?
Yeah.
Do we value these deep things? Not like, do we like the same movies and what color to paint the living room?
Yeah.
But do we have a deep connection and an alliance in our values? Like you and I have very different spiritual practices, but nonetheless, we have an appreciation for one another's spiritual world. It's there.
Right.
And it's like, yes, what's going on over there for you, I respect and appreciate a lot more these days than I used to.
Thankfully.
Sorry. And what's going on for me?
That's a really sweet little example. You said a lot more these days. So what happened over time?
Well, I want to stay
by being callous. Well, just by being callous or crass or whatever. You did not, but missing the fact that something was really deeply meaningful to me created distance, and you realized you didn't want that.
That's true.
I never said anything to you like, "Hey, this is creating distance." And
I could feel it though. I could feel
you. But you could feel it.
I could feel you go.
You were
away.
like, "Well, shit, I just stepped in shit."
Yeah.
So,
and I don't want to hurt you. And my attempts to be funny, it became clear to me this isn't funny. This isn't. It could be. It could.
Totally.
There's all kinds of things that we find funny, and that just wasn't particularly funny. And I could see where it actually had you feel less seen and less appreciated. And it's like, wow, I don't want that. That pains me to think that I can make a joke, but it doesn't, that somehow that I don't appreciate what's going on for you. And that would be painful. And it's like, well, then it's not funny anymore.
Yeah.
So, but having that deep, coming back to the wound thing, but having that deep appreciation of where are we aligned in our lives. And I think that it's helpful to reassess these on a regular basis because we go through different developmental phases in our lifetime. So we may be a different person. We're obviously a different person than we were in 20s and 30s, et cetera.
Absolutely.
So we should come back to it and say, what's important to us now? And are we still aligned? Or what does it look like now? And we're not frozen in time. And I don't expect you to be that person forever. And that can be scary. But if we understand like, hey, deep down, I really get that we're on the same page and we want a life that where our paths are aligned and parallel with one another. Great. Then it is about like, cool. Then what could we do to help us here? We might, the only thing in the way is this wound or this resistance to giving up a thing or whatever. Cool. We can get help with that.
Right.
There's hope. But if it's, I think it's pretty obvious to you and me when we're talking to certain people, like they're just not aligned. They're not on the same page. Right. They might like
having they've never had that conversation.
They've never had that conversation, but they like having sex and they like the way there's a status thing going on. And like, who am I? I can't be, I don't want to be divorced at this age. It's like, those are the wrong reasons to stay in a relationship.
Yes.
You know, so, but it's nothing about that grounded, deep level of connection and like, hey, this is what I stand for with me and for you. Mm-hmm. And if you're blinded by whatever's happening for you, I'm going to hold the center here and make sure we get help with that.
Yeah.
But without that part, at least when I talk with guys, there's this kind of helpless or hopeless feeling of like, what are we working on here? There's nothing, we're not on the same page. Everything's just a pissing match. Mm-hmm. And so I like to encourage people, go deeper. And when you see the other person from a much deeper level, underneath their wounds and their day-to-day shit and what they leave on the floor and all that kind of stuff, like who is this person really? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And do I want a relationship with that person? Yeah. And it's either like, we're good friends. Right. And I want them to have a good life. Or it's like, no, this is the person I want to spend my life with this person. I really want to be with them. Okay, great. Mm-hmm. Start from there. Then the other stuff we can work through. Yeah. Unless it's murder and farting.
Murder and incessant farting. I was going to make a joke when you talked about working on yourself of like, oh, so you stopped eating cruciferous vegetables and somehow that impacted the wee space.
But I think that's a big takeaway. A lot of us are stuck in the shallow end of the pool when it's painful like this. You know, I like to take people deeper. Like, what are we really standing for in our lives at this time? And does that person meet us there? Are they an ally for us there? And if they're not, it's okay. Yeah. It's okay. It just means that we've grown apart or we never had that connection to begin with. We don't need to make them the bad guy. But that's where an invitation could be like, hey, this is what I stand for. And I don't know where you are, but this is what I would love to have in our lives. What about you? And the other person can be like, oh my God, that's amazing. I've been wanting to go deeper too, but I don't know how, and maybe we should get help. Or the other person be like, what the hell are you talking about? I just want to watch Netflix every day.
Yeah. And you said something, a couple of minutes back where you talked about like a developmental phase or stage. Like their way of being may have really served them at a particular time in their life, but because of where we are now as a couple or where they are individually, it actually doesn't serve them. And I think that that's really potent to underscore that, because I think that's part of what I'm talking about is in this, I love you, you're perfect, now change, or how do you invite somebody into a thing when they're deep in their own, in patterning that might be rooted in wounding or might be rooted in just like they're just programming, whatever you want to call it, but it's old and it's not often conscious. And so this, all of this can apply.
Well, this brings up a whole other point, which is when we're wounded, how do we act with each other? Because if we're just continuing to injure one another and, you can't have those conversations, and then your sex life is dead because it's like there's so much hurt there. Yeah, for sure. If your communication is poor and hurtful, without even if you're like, I'm not trying to hurt you, but you guys are hurting one another. Right. You can't get through this to this deeper level.
Yeah. In a relationship, how we carry the flag for what really matters, for the kind of relationship we want, in the face of perhaps someone's way of being that might not even serve them anymore, but certainly doesn't serve the relationship. Yes.
Well, I think that's where it's our responsibility to keep our side of the street clean. So when I'm working with guys and they want to come in and it's like, my girlfriend this or my wife that, my girlfriend this, my wife that, it's like, what do you want? What do you stand for? What's true for you? What do you want in this lifetime? And then let's align with that. Let's make sure that your life is aligning more and more and more with that. And then it'll become obvious what's not in alignment. It'll be like you're playing in a different musical key and you'll just hear these notes that don't fit in anymore. And if you know what you stand for and you know what you want in your life, and it doesn't have to be crystal clear, but you know what direction you're heading. You're not waiting for your partner to give that information to you. You're not waiting for the world to give that information to you. You're not waiting for permission for that to come. When you have that clarity and like, I know I'm moving in this direction, and then you can make that request. Like, what do you want? Would you like, this is where I want to go. It will become pretty obvious. We're just not on the same page.
Yeah. I agree with what you're saying. I think the reason that I'm like pausing with all this is like wanting to also really speak to the people that are in committed relationships and they want to be in that relationship, and this is still happening. So it's not,
I'm speaking to that.
It's like they don't necessarily want to call it quits.
No.
And therefore it seems like that coming back into conversation and relationship around the thing, you for sure getting clear on what you need and want and what's true for you and what's right for you, and then carrying the flag for that and inviting them in, and yes, but coming back to that conversation. And the reason that I'm saying that is that there are times when even in our relationship, it's really clear. I mean, we've even talked about it on these kinds of podcast type conversations before, where it's like, make sure you're fed, make sure you're slept, make sure that whatever those core needs are met before you try to, like, don't bring up a heavy parenting conversation at 9:30 at night when everybody's tired at the end of their chain, and right. Or don't expect like to have a great sex night if you're tired and at the end of your chain and you want, it's like, what do you do when you're setting yourself up for failure? So there are some things that it feels almost like engineering without being manipulative. It does seem important to be clear and you're clear-minded with things Absolutely. As they are, in terms of like, okay, well, in this case with my client, this person is behaving a certain way. We've unpacked this before in our session, but they behave this way when they're over full. Similar to how I did with you in my life. Mm-hmm. And it's like, so we know that there are circumstances, there are choices that go into play that create those circumstances. And when those choices don't go into play and those circumstances don't get created, this is a different person.
Yeah. So that's a great example of cleaning up your side of the street.
Your side of the street.
Are you bringing the best version of yourself to the relationship?
Yeah.
Or are you overextending all these areas and then showing up toxic or tired or underinflated, and then that's what you're going to get.
Comes back to are we fundamentally aligned? What is important to you? Because there are people that I sort of talk to people about, like, what's their primary relationship? Is it their actual relationship? For some people, work is their primary relationship. For some people, substance use is their primary relationship, even though they have a relationship. And what we talk about, everything we talk about is inside the context that relationship, our partnership, is primary. I would say that it actually goes, there's a level underneath that, which is relationship to self. Yeah, of course. I mean,
so that's what I'm speaking to, is like, what am I doing to strengthen my relationship with self so that I'm clear about when I'm in a clear state of mind, my body's healthy. We can't do any of this stuff when we're dragging and we're in pain and
totally. But you're putting it in, it's like, yes, relationship with self, so that it's in service of, because if you could have an awesome relationship with yourself and you and I could be completely disconnected.
Absolutely.
So you being in good relationship with yourself is in service of
I would add, there's an asterisk to that. Like, you and I could be in an awesome relationship with myself, and it would be painful if you and I were disconnected. Yeah. And that's what I mean about the wrong note in the symphony.
Okay. That's helpful to be specific.
If I am treating myself with compassion, I'm present with myself, I'm honoring myself, I'm living more and more in my values day to day. Yeah. My work is going to be in alignment. How I treat my body is going to be in alignment. Mm-hmm. Everything is coming into alignment. It becomes more and more obvious when things are out of alignment. So when I walk into the environment, into the container with you, it's off.
Yeah.
There's something off here. Either I'm allowing you to treat me in a way, or I'm treating you in a way that I wouldn't treat myself. That's out of integrity. that feels off. Mm-hmm. And it's hard when we're more conscious to this stuff. It's really hard to ignore it at that point.
Yeah.
So when you've cleaned up your side of the street, so to speak, we're much more aware when things are out of alignment and able to address them. I think the reflexive thing is to kick, some people just want to kick it to the curb, but it's like, hey, this is out of alignment. Here's what I see possible.
Yeah.
Are you open to talking about it, open to working on it?
Right. I'm smiling because I want to make a joke about the puppy being out of alignment somehow. How do we want to be skillful around this little Tasmanian devil?
She's going to interrupt us any minute, but I have to go to the bathroom.
So bad.
So bad. That feels good. Do you have anything else?
No, I feel done.
There she is. There she is.
What time is it?
9:30.
Okay. I have to go.
Okay. All right.
You should go to the bathroom.
Did you get to scratch the itch you had? Talk about?
Yeah.
Okay.
This was. I thought that there was a way. There was something you talked about with.
I'm doing Lamaze exercises right now to keep.
Okay, go do what you need.
Well, no, like what do you finish it up?
Go.
I don't want to come back.
I can talk to you while you're shitting. So I'll be here on the mic. You go into the bathroom.
If you just give me a minute, I might be able to breathe through.
It was
like
just
a truck driver.
If you don't, we're done anyway. So even if there is a thing, we have to be done. So let's just stop.
Okay, you're done. All right, because then you'll be like, if we're going down the stairs, like, oh my God, this and this and that.
Well, there was something that you said last night. You were talking. You were kind of debriefing about your day. You talked about that, and I was like, oh, that would be so good to talk about. And you were like, I should write that down. I'm going to go write that down. That gives me an idea.
You said that, or I said that?
You said that.
Oh,
did you write it down?
I don't know.
Okay, doesn't matter because you got to poop.
If these interviews are helping you, please leave a positive review on whatever podcast app you use so that others can discover the show more easily.